Joined now here by Dane Brugler, the one and only of The Athletic, the Beast, and I think the best NFL draft expert out there. Dane, thanks so much for coming on.
No, of course. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we'll begin with just general NFL draft buzz. Combine always a very whisper, rumory time. Any good tidbits you've heard as of late?
No, I think everybody wants to know how these quarterbacks are going to shake out, right? It feels like we're going to see some action in the top five, and it's just a matter of how is that going to play out? Is it, I think we see quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, but who's picking third? Is it the Patriots? Is that where we see a shakeup? Maybe a team like the Falcons, the Vikings, the Broncos, the Raiders moving up to 3 to go get that third quarterback. Obviously, Justin Fields is kind of like the first domino in this whole quarterback conversation. And then if you're the Commanders, you make the Bears say no, right? You say, hey, we'll give you a 1 next year and maybe a player. Let's go up to 1. We know you like a couple of these guys the same, right? Let's go up to 1. And you make the Bears say no, absolutely not. So
when it comes to 1, is it going to be Caleb Williams, you think, in the end?
I'd be surprised if it's not. Yeah, I think it'll be Caleb Williams, and 95% of me say he's going to be a Bear. There's a 5% that you just never know. I mean, what if the Bears do like two of these guys similar? And obviously Cliff Kingsbury, we know that connection. For him to leave the Raiders, go to the Commanders like he did, it's like maybe they make a move for him. Maybe they try. But like I said, you make them say no. I'd be surprised if the first pick is not Caleb Williams, most likely to the Bears, but keeping an open mind there.
Is there any concern over his dad and his presence there?
I think that when I talk to teams about Caleb and off-the-field stuff, they don't mention the fingernails, they don't mention the crying, they don't mention any of that stuff. The couple of things they do mention is just they want to be convinced, and that's where the combine play comes into play. They want to be convinced that he's all in on football, that it's because he wants to be the Jay-Z of the NFL. He wants to be a media mogul. He wants to be an entrepreneur. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But to play quarterback at a high level in the NFL, you better be all in and do everything you need to do plus more to maximize what's going to be happening on game days. So teams need to be convinced that he's all in, and that's going to be his focus more so than marketing deals and trying to grow his brand once he gets to the NFL.
When it comes to Drake Maye out of North Carolina, I've seen some trends in mock drafts of him sliding a little bit. Are you buying that, or what do you think there?
Well, I think it's important because I get a lot of questions like, can Jaden Daniels cement himself as quarterback too? And you can't think that way because there's not one consensus draft board that everybody's working off of. All these teams look at these quarterbacks differently. 3 years ago, I know one team that liked Zach Wilson over Trevor Lawrence. They would have drafted Zach Wilson number 1 overall that year. So every team's going to be a little bit different with their orders and exactly where they feel these quarterbacks should be drafted. And Drake Maye, he's no different. He's not a perfect player. He's got, there's some reckless decisions he needs to improve upon. But in my opinion, he's the second quarterback in this draft. I think you talk about all the athleticism that he offers, the mobility, the arm, the decision making. He's an intelligent guy. He's tough. I think he benefits from the older brother theory. Growing up with 3 older brothers, he was always playing up a level, so his toughness was developed at an early age. Really competitive kid. He's the only player over the last 2 years in college football that had over 9,000 total yards of offense. So yeah, maybe the win-loss record wasn't great, especially down the stretch. The Clemson tape, NC State tapes weren't great. But this guy produces, and I think there were times where he felt like he had to put the superhero cape on because the receivers, the offensive line weren't necessarily helping him, but he did what he could plus more, and he's still a redshirt sophomore. He's a young player. Thinking about where he's going to be 3 years from now, to me, that's a reason to get excited.
So Patriots then at number 3 kind of have in theory it goes QB.
Yeah.
Do they go Marvin Harrison? Do they go quarterback? Could they trade down? What are your expectations at the Patriots spot? And does the draft, to an extent, kind of start there a little bit?
I think so. I think the Patriots are kind of the linchpin there. And I'd kind of be surprised if Marvin Harrison's the pick, just because I think it's going to be a quarterback, whether that's the Patriots or another team. But I think if you're the Patriots, you're coming into this week hoping that all 3 quarterbacks crush it during the interviews. None of them are working out, but they crush it during the interviews because either A, we're going to draft one of 3. We know you look at, because it's remember too, if you're drafting a quarterback top 10, it's an ownership draft pick. They're a big part of that decision making process. And if they saw what happened this past year, they don't want to go through that again. If they love one of these 3 quarterbacks, you take them. If you don't, then I think you trade out of there. You get more picks. They're not a quarterback away from competing. They need help in a lot of different places. You think about Elliott Wolf, who's now running things in the front office. He comes from that Green Bay system where they value picks. And so to get more picks, trading back. Now, you don't want to trade back too far because this is a great draft to be picking top 10. But you have to look at, I'm sure they're going to get offers, whether it's Atlanta or Minnesota, maybe the Raiders. Obviously, Antonio Pierce has a connection with Jaden Daniels if Daniels is still available at 3. So, yeah, if you're the Patriots, you're just hoping you have options, and I think there's a good chance they do.
Comes to the Giants then at number 6. Is quarterback in play for them despite the Daniel Jones contract and uncertainty there, or is it more maybe they just stand pat and take one of those wide receivers that falls?
They've done a lot of work on quarterbacks. So now whether or not they feel great about J.J. McCarthy at 6, that I'd be surprised at that. It was the 6th pick overall, 5 years ago when they took Daniel Jones, and how that's worked out. But I think where they're sitting, quarterback is maybe more of a pipe dream than anything. They also really need an X receiver in a bad way. No matter who your quarterback is, you need an X receiver, and this is a great draft to get one of those guys. So quarterback, receiver, and the Giants sitting there at 6. Probably Roma Dunze, and if he's sitting there at 6, in most other drafts, Dunze is a wide receiver 1. So you come away with an X, true X. You go this season with Daniel Jones as your quarterback, and then you reset your quarterback expectations next offseason.
When I look at the Titans, seems kind of easy. Fashanu or Alt, right?
Yeah, if they stay there. I think that this is a really good tackle class. So there's a good chance, you bring in Coach Callahan too, and what he can do for that offensive line. You think about the offensive tackles, the options they'll have between Alt, Fashanu, from our guy from Morgan State, Talisa Fuaga, Guyton. Amarius Mims to me is the most fascinating player in the draft. This guy's built in a lab, 6'7", 330. His arms I can't wait to see the arm length, over 35 inches. And just to see him work out here is going to be really interesting because he moves really well on film. So traits-wise, that's exactly how you want to draw it up. He has 8 starts. So what do you do with that? That's going to be fascinating to see how every team kind of handles that situation. But, yeah, if I'm a team like the Titans and I'm really targeting a tackle, I wouldn't mind moving back a little bit. And maybe a team like the Raiders move up to get a J.J. McCarthy or, whatnot. So, if I'm the Titans, I feel good about sticking and picking. But also maybe if I move back 5 spots, who knows? Maybe Brock Bowers doesn't play there. Titans have talked. Rand Carthon talked about here. They need to get more explosive on offense. They need to add another weapon and probably miss out on the first 3 receivers. But a guy like Brock Bowers, now they went guard last year, tight end. If they went tight end this year, like 2 positions you don't necessarily see in the top 15, that might be a tough pill to swallow. But you can't look at Brock Bowers as just a tight end. He's a little more than that.
Yeah. Speaking of 2 spots you don't only see in the top 15, Falcons, running back, tight end. They have a wild card. Do they trade up for a quarterback? Do they go after Fields? If they get the quarterback pre-draft, then what's their plan?
Fields is the wild card, right?
Yeah.
That market's going to be interesting. And, the Bears, they came out and Ryan Poles said they would like to make a deal before free agency if that's the direction they're going, which everyone believes that they are. So to put a timeline on it, it was interesting. It's an interesting choice. I know they want to do right by Fields, but to make that public was interesting, kind of sacrificing some leverage there potentially. But what's that market look like? I don't think he's a fit with Denver and Sean Payton. With Luke Getsy going to the Raiders, that's not a fit. So we're talking, the Falcons, the Patriots? Those seems like the 2 most. I don't believe the Steelers rumors. I think that's fabricated.
It was the Arthur Smith stuff.
Yeah,
originally.
Right. And so that plays a part too. And obviously the Falcons passed on Justin Fields, but was that an Arthur Smith call? How does Fontenot, the general manager, how does he feel about it? And obviously evaluations change now that we've seen Justin Fields in the NFL for a few years. So that's going to be a really interesting domino here because the Falcons feel like they're ready to compete if you can find that quarterback.
So Bears at 9.
Yep.
You haven't mentioned any defensive prospects. Assuming those top 3 receivers are gone, feels like a decent spot for the first defender to maybe go?
Yeah, possible. And if I'm the Bears, I am trying to trade up. I'm trying to get one of those
Good,
receivers. Yeah. If I don't have a second, but I have a third, and plus I'm going to get something for Justin Fields. I'm going to use that, and I'm going to try and get up one of those receivers. If I can get up to, because the Chargers, they want out of there at 5. If I can get up to 5 and get Neighbors, easy decision. But if they don't, if they stay put at 9, yeah, I think they like their tackle situation right now. So defense, Jalen Johnson, he's coming back. They're going to bring him back. Maybe that's where they first take the first pass rusher, whether it's Dallas Turner. Could they go with a defensive tackle? Byron Murphy's kind of a dark horse first defensive player off the board kind of guy. So, yeah, where that first defensive player is drafted, how early, where does he go, and who is it? What position? That's definitely one of the wild cards of the draft.
I'm looking here at 11, 12, 13, Vikings, Broncos, Raiders. Is this, assuming the interviews go well for J.J. McCarthy, is that maybe the sweet spot for him?
Yeah, and if I'm Minnesota, I love that fit for him, for both sides, really. You bring Kirk Cousins back on a 1-year deal. You draft J.J. McCarthy. I think that makes sense for everybody. But how does Denver feel about him? How do the Raiders feel? Because J.J. McCarthy is not the most NFL-ready guy. I think if you threw him out there, he would be fine, and I think he has the mental toughness to work through all the mistakes and the roadblocks that are going to inevitably come. But do the Broncos feel that way about him, or do they have to? Would they start Jarrett Stidham for 8 games before they feel ready with J.J. McCarthy? Do they want to do that? But if you're the Broncos, what are your options? If you can't trade up to 3, I'm just not sure what else you're going to do. And so I do think McCarthy this week is going to really impress with the interviews. He has the intangibles. I know fans get annoyed when you talk about win-loss record, but teams care about it, so it's a relevant stat. And J.J. McCarthy, 36-2 in high school with a state championship, 27-1 with a national championship in Michigan. That kind of thing matters to teams. And 750 dropbacks, not ideal, but Anthony Richardson had 400 some, and he went top 5 last year. So I think teams would be willing to look past that if they believe in the player and the person. And I think one of these teams in the top 12 to 13 picks, that somebody will.
The Saints' plans. I feel like they've kind of invested it. Trench played decently, but that's still kind of an issue for him.
Right? The Trevor Penning experiment's not quite working out. So, would they go tackle again? I think they need a pass rusher. Mm-hmm. This is where we could see that first or second pass rusher come off the board. Mm-hmm. I know there's been rumblings about, would they unload Lattimore to free up space, and so could corner be in the mix there? But, it feels like that's a spot there at 14 where we could see one of these defensive guys.
Any thoughts on what Seattle might look to do defense with new coordinator or new head coach in there?
Yeah, I think that defensive tackle is one of those areas where they've invested in the position before, but they still need to do more. And Byron Murphy, if he makes it there to 16, love that fit. I think he runs today,
he's gonna run quick.
Yeah, I talked to him last week when he was training. And he said he's going to be over 300 pounds, and he wants to run the 4.8.
He was at 297 today when he weighed in.
Oh, was he? Okay. Yeah, so that means he wants to run fast. Yeah. So 4.7, put it down, yeah. But then he's a great story, too, because he always saw himself as an NFL running back until he got to high school, and he was a starting middle linebacker for DeSoto. Sophomore year, they had these pressure packages, so he would come down to the line and play when they do, third down blitzes. And it worked so well that the next game they're like, all right, you're a defensive tackle now. And so from the sophomore year on, he just kept adding weight. He got to 275, and his senior year he was about 280, and he broke Von Miller's high school record for sacks that year. So we've seen him get better and better and better. He's a freaky guy. He can play the run, play the pass. He's going to go somewhere in those teens area. And if he's there for Seattle, I think that makes a ton of sense.
Bengals at 18, feels like a great spot for one of those right tackles you mentioned earlier, or maybe the floor for Brock Bowers with positional value issues.
Cool. If they come away with Brock Bowers in the first round, man, the best way you can judge if a draft pick is a good draft pick is if the rest of your division's going, oh, crap. Or if, it's, they drafted that guy? Okay, that's fine. But if they're like, oh, no, and I feel like in the AFC North, they're used to that because good players always follow the Ravens. And if a good player like that, like Brock Bowers, falls to the Bengals, man, that answers a lot of questions. Tight end, if Tyler Boyd walks, that use him in the slot. So that's a pipe dream, I think. You can't rule it out because figuring out where Brock Bowers is going to go in the first round is so tough. But I think more likely it's right tackle. That
Yeah.
seems like the most likely. And now, are they comfortable with a guy like Mims, who's there's going to be some rough patches early
Yeah.
on? Do they want more of the more polished player? So but the Bengals at 18 feels like right tackle feels like where they're going.
Yeah. Looking at the 20s there, Steelers and Dolphins right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe center goes off the board there.
Good chance, yeah. I think Steelers, good bet they go offensive line.
Yeah.
They've been doing their work on these tackles. And they traded for Broderick Jones last year in the first round. Hey, or maybe they take another Georgia tackle.
Pairing with Mims.
Don't rule that out. Center, with Jackson Powers Johnson. He's definitely in that mix. He's the top center this year, in my opinion, and I think a lot of teams share that opinion. Steelers, Dolphins, a couple other teams that are kind of crossing their fingers. They might fall to the early to mid-20s. So, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense for that offensive line. And this is a good year for centers in that range. I think Graham Barton's worth a first-round pick, and Zach Frazier is awesome from West Virginia. So, it's a good year for him.
We'll come back to Frazier in a minute. I got a spot for him. Eagles at 22. You think they're going to stick with their premium position strategy early on?
They're not going to deviate. They don't. That's not what they do. So it's is it going to be corner? Is it going to? They can't help themselves with the offensive line, defensive line. We'll see what they do in free agency because obviously they need to get better on defense in the back end. They have to. So do they make a move at corner? Do something? They're not going to draft a linebacker in the first round. It really feels like it's going to be corner or maybe a pass rusher. What corner's there for them? Does a Nate Wiggins fall that far? I think Terrion Arnold will be off the board. I think Quinyon Mitchell will be off the board. Which corner will be there for him? Wiggins makes a lot of sense there. I like that.
Houston maybe in a similar boat?
Yeah, and I think, we'll see, is Jonathan Grenard back or not? We could see a pass rusher. Does Jared Verse make it that far? Chop Robinson could be an option there. We know they'd love to go just add more firepower to that defense. I think they feel good where their offense is headed. So let's get better on defense and could be outside corner, with one of those guys, or could be, like I said, I think Chop Robinson. When you have a first step like that, teams can fall in love with that. Like Jared Verse is a good player, but among these first round pass rushers, he has a distinguishing trait that teams would really fall in love with. It's a rare trait, and I can't wait to see what he does. He's going to run in 40 inches in the vert, and the broad will be over 11 feet. I can't wait to see a 10-yard split, what that is, because that man is so explosive.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That burst off the line. It's going to be a classic Penn State impressive
You're
performance.
right. You're right.
All right, my Cowboys then at 24.
This is what we're talking about with Graham Barton and offensive line. I think that's a possibility there. I think pass rushers in play, depending on how they want to do with Michael Parsons and all that. Corner is definitely in play. Obviously, Diggs coming back, but Duran Bland, you feel good about him, moving forward, but still, you need more help at corner. So, it'll be interesting with him with one of these corners, where to fall Wiggins or. I don't think Quinyon Mitchell falls that far. Do they feel good about Kool-Aid McKinstry? How do they feel about Cooper DeJean? Pass rusher, corner, offensive line feels like the most likely for the Cowboys there.
All right, Lions at 29. I'm not even sure it's a need. I don't think there's a more Dan Campbell player in this year's class than Zach Frazier.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and obviously you got Frank Ragnow there, but Frazier does have some experience at guard, and could
Jackson's
be this
a free agent.
Right, succession plan and all that. So, if Campbell's in that interview room and hears Frazier, and Frazier won the DNA lottery. His mom's side are wrestlers, dad's side are football players, and, it's just perfect for a center. I mean, he was heavyweight wrestler, lost 2 wrestling matches his entire high school career. Both came his freshman year. He was dominant, and so we see that on the football field for sure.
And I know teams love that wrestler background along the offensive line.
No doubt. No. When you talk about leverage, you talk about grip strength, being able to win your matchups one-on-one, it definitely translates.